Hello, my name is Ronnie Del Carmen. I am a writer-director of animated features for the last 20 years. I've been working at Pixar, worked on movies like Finding Nemo, Up, and I was the co-director on Inside Out.
Hi, my name is Brenda Gilbert. I'm co-founder and president of BRON Media Corporation. BRON has executive produced or produced over 90 movies, and we look forward to building even more strong partnerships.
Hi, I'm Jen McCarron, and I work as CEO of Thunderbird Entertainment and of Atomic Cartoons. I've grown up in the animation industry. Currently at Atomic, we're doing a lot of television series for Netflix, Disney, Apple, the list goes on, and very happy to be here with everyone today.
And I'm Jinko Gotoh. I produce animated features, worked at Disney, worked at Pixar with Ronnie. And then since 2003, I've been doing all kinds of indie films as well as studio films, and currently working with Mark Osborne on a Netflix animated feature. So what's really great, I think, about this conversation that we're going to have is that, you know, I think we've all sat in lots of juries for lots of festivals. And what to me was enlightening and hopeful this year was that we saw a handful of amazing shorts created all around the globe that talks about social injustice. And so I thought, you know, we could, you know, have a conversation about, you know, how powerful our medium is in terms of being able to convey these types of difficult and painful stories to help move our culture forward and hope to educate, you know, the audiences.
Yeah, sure. I think that we are in a very unique industry in terms of content, and the content that we could put out there and can put out there is very impactful in the way of not just starting a conversation, but by continuing that conversation and having educational components to it. We do it for entertainment purposes as well, but there are certain subject matters, there's certain underrepresented groups, there's certain things that aren't necessarily talked about. And also indicative of this panel today, if you look around, it's a very diverse group. As a collective, we're very strong, but also just in terms of content providers, is I feel that we have an obligation to put great content out there that is very socially impactful with, you know, topics that are applicable to everybody around the globe. And these are themes, these are initiatives, these are, you know, people that, you know, that need help, that needs, you know, systemic change to be made. And also by way of our content, we can provide some educational components to it. The medium that people consume content is that medium to look at, but also a way that we can carry on a conversation beyond, you know, wherever we watch our content.
Yeah, what I thought was really impressive and courageous was for these women to come out and these men to come out and talk about really painful things that have happened to us as human beings, right? Like the torture letters, to be able to talk about things that happened that historically were shunned. And so I think it's really, really important that, you know, we have the ability and people are actually coming out and talking about this and sharing this globally, because whether these stories happen in Chicago or they happen in, you know, in the Philippines, wherever. I mean, these are global stories that impact all human beings. So I thought that was really amazing this year to see these shorts coming out from all around the world that talk about human injustice.
I agree. I'm always fascinated by animation as a storytelling medium. It's usually known to be kind of just for kids or for action adventure. And to see these shorts tackle these not only very difficult but weighty subjects, it feels to me that it's quite an opportunity because of how stealthy animation is. Mm-hmm. People don't have the usual kind of barriers to animated content. they can't quite immediately, I know I can't immediately kind of dismiss or kind of make a prejudgment about what I'm watching. So animation has an opportunity to actually deliver not only a very potent message, but it's enticing as a form itself. It makes people want to pay attention because it's animated. And the abstraction of these ideas, because they look not only beautiful, but the design in itself kind of pulls people in. It allows for this kind of sugar-coated pill to come into people's lives. And then when they ingest the message, which is the most important thing to me, it feels like their defenses have been not only down, but they're kind of in a position to welcome it. So I think it's a very unique opportunity for a lot of people that are making shorts to continue to be brave, courageous, and also kind of, it's not easy to tell these stories, especially the personal ones. I would love that a lot more of these shorts allow people to be not only more courageous, but feel comfortable that this is a way to tell your story.
I agree. I think animation is one of the best mediums to get these messages across, because you're not in a box. You can tell them in so many different ways, and you can portray your story in different lights. And as content providers, we have an obligation to, especially for children a lot of the time, make sure that they're seeing themselves reflected back to them in a positive light. And I've always thought, if you can see it, you can be it. And if we can shape the narrative so that people can, kids and adults as well, can see their stories, I think there's no better medium than animation to creatively tell that, especially in the short format, which we saw this year.
I feel I left the jury going like, we have to make a social impact collective. How do we do this? And Brenda and I had a conversation earlier this week going, how do we do this as a movement and get more filmmakers? And when I talk about filmmakers, I think, for example, Lawrence Ralph isn't a filmmaker, right? But now he's an award-winning filmmaker. But how do you get other people from all around, all types of life, to tell these stories? Because I think the animation medium allows you to do that in such a powerful way that I think, we have the opportunity here to make change and to influence.
I think a lot of people don't realize that animation is a medium to communicate important things, impactful things. I think that's the thing there, right there, like having Lawrence Ralph as an instructor, as a professor at Princeton, and saying, okay, I want to use this as a medium because I really want to amplify what I'm trying to say, what I'm trying to convey. And if you look around at a lot of the content by way of documentaries and docuseries, you see much more animation there to really supplement and to really give visibility to very, very important themes and very important issues around the world. So, we were all very lucky to be on this panel with the quality and the caliber of the animated shorts in such a short period. Like, think about shorts. It's a short period of time to convey a message, and let alone to have a remaining impact on somebody. And yet, the multiple shorts that we saw, we're still talking about it. It's still imprinted in our minds, and we're all on this panel compelled to do something about it. So I'm very, very happy to not just only to be on this panel, but now what can we do moving forward together?
I couldn't agree more, Brendan. We're getting a lot of outreach now in animation it's almost like when you can't tell it in documentaries, but it's, you're trying to do a recreation or, provide that context, the visual support mechanism. There's no better form than animation. So to take that idea and use it to convey those messages and help, try and make the world a better place, I think is what a gift that we have.
Yeah, totally. Because again, you've seen the power of animation. If you look at like what happened during World War II, animation was used as, as a medium to do propaganda, right? So flip it on a positive way, we can really use animation as a medium to create positive change.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I like the discussion when we talk about obligation, because working in the entertainment industry, everything is about the product that will entertain, that will please the most number of people, and hopefully it will displease very few people, if any at all. Whereas movies that have very strong and powerful messages tend to actually communicate very difficult subject matter, and then experiences that are not in the mainstream. But it kind of tends to put a wall around, for all of us human beings, around subject matter that we don't talk about. It puts kind of a way of, it kind of teaches us that this is not polite conversation to have. That it teaches us, even the children, to not wander into the subject matter or to bring certain things up to light. And even as an adult, I kind of measure kind of a lot of how I navigate through the world based on what is acceptable. But when there is that obligation, like you guys mentioned, that the content that we saw in this festival becomes seen by as many people as possible, and it becomes spoken of, that barrier kind of comes down, it starts to erode. And if those values become valuable to many people around the world, then it doesn't become that kind of careful thing anymore. And then a sense of having to do something about it, or having a position about the subject matter, starts to enter people's lives, no matter how young or old you are. That is what I feel is a great opportunity, and that kind of sense of obligation that all of us who are part of this industry could allot our attention and resources to having more stories like this made and be seen.
Yeah, and to see, I think, just to extend on what you're just saying, Ronnie, for me, it's like, I think it's opening up our medium to tell different types of stories, right? Because we tend to, especially in North America, be kind of pigeonholed with animation to be very four quadrant, very comedy-centric. And whereas I think when you see shorts like this, I hope that it gives opportunities for filmmakers to think about, you know, what are the other types of stories that we haven't really told that have the same kind of impact and the power that these shorts had, you know, affecting all of us watching them this past couple of weeks. So that's the other reason I feel that is important to form like a collective where we can be showing these kind of shorts to really influence the industry and the filmmakers and the audience, because there's stories that we can be telling in animation that we're not today.
Yes, and to evoke change. I think that's really, really important, because we tend to be a bit complacent when I say we, because a lot of times we in past, these things have been to just watch for pure entertainment. And now there's that messaging just to sort of rock the boat, so to speak, in terms of changing political and social conformity, and making change, which is impactful and benefits all of us. It's not just one particular group. And also what's important to note is the authenticity of the filmmakers behind the scenes, to really give a true depiction of what's happening, because a lot of times it's based on their actual experiences or the experiences of their friends and loved ones. It's, you know, doing something, for me to do something and put it on screen when there's some sort of hardship is, from a Canadian perspective, because I'm born and raised in Vancouver, it's very difficult if I don't have collaborators, if I don't have people that are experienced from the South or from, you know, other parts of the world talking about something that I want to put on screen. So the authenticity and also the imagery, a lot of stereotypes have been reinforced and passed on, you know, in animation as well, not just live action. And so we have to sort of really think about the realities of what we're working in, but also to give a true depiction of what's being put on screen.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for us. A lot of the times we create content in the major studios who want to put out entertainment. They just want to kind of homogenize a lot of the stories, so that becomes because it's not specific. It kind of is formulated so that it would include everybody, but because it's not specific, it's nobody's direct story.
Mm.
So that authenticity tends to get watered down, or its message needs to kind of be more general. So those are the kind of sliders that usually happen. So I'm glad that we're talking about that, because a lot of even the major studios should start to pay attention to how their stories in their quest to create entertainment need to have more weight and authenticity to it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Especially when you see how divided this world is, you know?
And I think we have a platform, and with that platform comes responsibility. I wish everyone could see the amazing shorts we were so lucky to see on the jury that did push social justice forward, because I think that's when conversations happen and it's acceptable to talk. And that's how grassroots movements start, is through that. And the ability to use your privilege and platform as a medium to do good. And I think we all agreed on the jury, if only everybody could see these shorts, how do we get them out there?
Right.
I know. I wish that everybody could see the short. I wish there was a way for me to make it feel like really cool for everybody in the world to go and see the shorts. And not only that, you know, you will make sure that your friends on Instagram know about it, and then you post a reaction on YouTube that you saw these shorts and how powerful they are. I want to make sure that people feel like, you know what, I saw these shorts. I'm cool for having seen them. Why haven't you? You know?
Well, I kind of did that on my own little micro world this week, where I said, you guys all have to watch this short, you know, and
that's the way it's done, right? Oh man, I feel left out. I didn't see those socially relevant shorts. What are you watching? I'm just watching popular media. Really?
Shame on you, right?
Is that all you're watching? Well, you know, you got to take some vitamins with that.
Yeah, more people, if they see these types of shorts and the importance of this starting to create real change, will probably step forward.
I think so. I think that because sometimes a lot of people equate like these message shorts as kind of grim and downers. I didn't feel that at all with all the shorts that we saw. They were lively, colorful, and their messages are very tough. But I didn't feel that I was kind of waiting for the grim message, or to feel like, oh, I don't know if I can handle this. No, I felt not only welcomed and kind of entertained, but I thought that the messages were things that I wanted. So it wasn't just a kind of like, oh man, shorts. You have to kind of like grit your teeth. No, these are very, very entertaining.
And also, it left me with a sense of hope, right?
Yes.
That they're sharing these very painful stories, but they're sharing this not to make us feel horrible, but also for us to be conscious about what's been going on. But there's a sense of hope for change. Yeah. And that was what I thought was so inspiring, that, you know, and so I feel like when that's happening, you know, there's, you know, in this grassroots way where filmmakers are, and people like Lawrence, who's a professor and not a filmmaker, but really wanted to use the medium to share a story that he said to me. I was speaking with him early in the week, and he said he wanted to say this, he wanted to convey this emotion in the book, but he said it was so difficult because you can't do that in a book, whereas you can in animation. And so that was the reason he said he felt it was important for him to do that, to make this short. So I hope that other, you know, great, you know, thinkers like Lawrence, whether they're journalists or authors or professors or whatever, you know, come and use our medium to tell these stories that I think will have a big impact in, you know, just creating a better world.
Absolutely.
What you said, Jinko, about the divisiveness of our world right now, and how the hope of less of a divide, I think, is shared within so many of us. And just getting people from outside the industry to use it as a medium to bring people together, not apart, in a message of hope wouldn't that be amazing?
Right.
Absolutely. I think the message of hope is a really important one. And Ronnie, I have a question for you. You mentioned like a lot of times people feel that this messages are associated with being grim. Do you feel maybe that it's also a sense of a lack of acknowledgement that certain things are not happening, or there's just an oversaturation of these topical matters in the entertainment industry or other mediums? Well,
I think that, to me anyway, that certain filmmakers, there's the whole spectrum of storytellers will tell the stories that impact them the most and kind of say it in the way that they want to say it. So I think that just opens the door for variety. So that the things that usually get people kind of put off are kind of like the ones that get talked about. Right. And usually it's the ones that people feel that they either flinch or wince from gets kind of the ink in the reports from people. And if they sample just those, then they will walk away with one impression that will stand for the rest of what would be called these animated shorts. Right. Whereas the entire spectrum of animated shorts that we've seen, even just from this one festival, was not only lively and varied, but even the message ones that had very powerful stories tended to entertain as well as deliver a message. And I think that it is kind of what we're talking about. It is just there's very little to kind of expose everybody to this range of voices and subject matter. That if the stereotype that's out there kind of needs to erode, it needs to be proven wrong by having more content that says, that had a message, it was entertaining, the characters are memorable, I want to recommend it. That can happen as well. Mm-hmm. But I'm glad that it would also have on the other part of the spectrum, where in kind of tough stories that are kind of a little more, you know, you need to be prepared to watch because they have a very potent message. That's included too. So I think that everything we're talking about right now is very relevant, because if our dream situation of having more of these shorts be made, more of them be seen, people will no longer have that kind of initial barrier of resistance to say, you know, it's an animated short, but it's not released by media. Oh, it might be a message one. You don't want that, right? You want to change people's minds about those things. And that can only happen, you know, with the content that's out there, the things that people will be lively enough to kind of feel like, hey, I got to recommend this. Oh, I want to talk about this. Or people just decide that, you know, this is a great short, not even qualify it.
Yeah, because it starts a conversation. These shorts starts a conversation, right? I have to say I was ignorant. I mean, you know, and I knew that there was all this police brutality, and I knew all this, you know, but I didn't really know how dire the situation was in Chicago for decades. And you know, we had heard about the corruption of the police, all that. But when you see that short, I mean, I immediately sent to my friends in Chicago and started a dialogue and a conversation. And it was great because I felt like I start to understand, you know, their history and be able to empathize and really understand, you know, the corruption and the pain that we've suffered in this country, in the U.S. And so I felt that, you know, these shorts allowed us to have that dialogue and conversations that we normally don't have, right?
Yeah, and that's what you highlighted, Jinko, is kind of the thing that tends to worry me the most, is that because we tend not to talk about them, then whatever that is if whatever it is the message, that it continues not only to happen, and it will have its victims and all the untoward, unfavorable repercussions. But even if people kind of peripherally know that they're there, there's no way for them to feel encouraged to talk about it, because not many people are actually touched by the story that isn't directly impacted by it. So they can't weigh in because they're not affected by it. And then from recent events, if the way that people are affected by any one issue that gets highlighted in any one of these shorts is by seeing somebody react to it either in a protest or in a way that becomes news in the evening, that's when it's the worst situation already. And it tends to make you fear the subject matter rather than understand it. It makes you have this other reaction that you don't want. Whereas the shorts, at least the ones that we've seen, felt like I felt intrigued and enticed enough to understand what the context of it. And then I put myself in the situation of the people who have been living in those stories. I feel now I can empathize and understand where my position would be. So there's nothing exploding. There's no situation where you have to be put on the line, but you are at that moment having to self-examine and see how you feel about something like this.
I totally agree with you. I mean, I love the other short Where We Were, which was about these three women, right?
Yeah.
One woman from Spain, one woman from Mozambique, another woman from Philippines. And the commonality of all these three women, three different parts of the world, but having to go through the same type of suffrage. Yeah. And then again, they found a way out, right? And so for me, that show was also powerful because you saw and felt and the pain, and then they escaped.
Yeah, and they found a way.
And they found
a way to actually have a life that was not only meaningful but safe. And I love that short as well, Jinko, because the voice of the woman from the Philippines, this story, since I was growing up until now, this happens in the country. And that that the context of this happens, and it involves all family members. And it's because nobody needs to fix it, is the kind of stance. It's been part of the fabric. Where I thought that it would make a difference is because it's in animation, for one. And the other is that the voice from the Philippines joins the voice of these two other women from other parts of the world, made her story kind of have a global context. So that thing that we experience in this festival is that the stories came from different parts of the world with different positions about certain things about everybody's life in a different part of the globe, made you empathize with what their plight is. You don't have to be there. You don't have to grow up being them to know what they're up against. And I believe that if just for that one story, all of us became part of those three women's lives in those specific countries. And no matter where you stand in kind of either having seen something like that, participated in it, or be family members who are like that, it just feels like, I know what that is. You kind of, and then what do you do? Where do you stand? As opposed to we'll never talk about it.
Yeah, it brought the world together.
Yeah.
And removes judgment. It helps to remove judgment when you can.
That's true. You're right.
Which I think that's what I felt, is that, you just, you can gain a better understanding. You never want to be judgmental. None of us do, but everyone has their own unconscious bias that we have to be aware of, and it helps to remove it.
Yeah, and the worldwide commonalities, just in terms of the women not self-blaming, because a lot of times women or people that are in abusive situations are going, what could I have done better? What's wrong with me? Why is this person reacting towards me in a certain way? And in all three women's situations, they're like, this is wrong. I can't endure this anymore. He's going to kill me. I need to get out. And so that, I feel, is also an empowering message for anybody that's in that particular situation, especially amidst COVID right now, where people have nowhere to go and they are confined in these, awful situations.
And what I loved about that short in specific also is that the purity of how each one of them talked about how they fell in love with these men that turned out to be monsters, right? And so there was that really human component of, I didn't know this is the person I was going to be with.
Mm-hmm.
And then having the courage to say, this is wrong, that I don't have to live this way.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. I think also imagining that this short gets shown somewhere in the enclaves in the Philippines and in the provinces. And these are whole communities. The communities in the Philippines are very tight knit. Mm-hmm. That when you come home to drop off your things, and then you step outside and be with the community. You hang out until sundown and you talk. Everybody knows everybody's story, even the most uncomfortable stories. Everybody knows, but people will still kind of skirt issues because they want to be polite, and you don't want to bring up a difficult subject. I just imagine a short like this being played in the town center where children are playing and people are after dinner hanging out to avoid the heat, and they watch this. And just like what all of you are talking about, it encourages the women to understand their situation wherein you didn't know this was going to happen to you and that you have a recourse and you deserve to actually be heard. But then also there's the men. If none of you ever talk about it, that you're not supposed to do this, maybe you copied your uncles, your fathers, your grandfathers, and you thought that was kind of part of what it was to be part of a village and this is what you do, then somehow that allows you to put yourself in that context. That's you, or someone like that. And that somehow you can probably curb, if not eradicate, that behavior when all of you have seen it. And you're kind of oh, it's a cartoon. Oh, wait. It may open up the conversation or allow for understanding and context to happen. And it may bring about the kind of change that no amount of preaching in the Sunday sermons is going to do, because everyone loves going to church in the Philippines. So that's one hopeful thing. I'm hoping that short gets shown in the Philippines.
I agree. Yeah, it was interesting because just going back to the torture letters, I showed it to a writer that lived in New York, and he said, he felt so guilty after watching that short, saying, I should have done something. I've seen this happen.
Yes.
But now seeing this short, he said, it's changed me, that I'm not going to tolerate this if I see this type of police brutality.
Yes.
And I think that's what we learn from watching these shorts, like where we were. Hopefully, when men sees this, they'll go, I can't do that to my wife.
You can't do that.
Or I can't tolerate, my sister's husband, or, whomever they are, right? Because we all know that exists.
Or create some empathy for those types of characters. So if people like that, people are motivated to reach out and create change and help.
Yeah.